Hi, guys. Welcome to the second episode of Mock Interview. Today, we have with us Miss Kalpana, who's a student currently at IIM Ahmedabad, a college that is a dream college for all of us. Most Indians have at least thought at least once to go to IIM Ahmedabad and do their MBA because of the kind of pop culture that has stemmed from colleges like IIM Ahmedabad, IIT Bombay. It has a cult following, and we have somebody who is studying there currently, and somebody who's gone through the rut of the GDPI phase last year. Today she will be helping us figure that and navigate that. But before that, a very warm welcome to you, Kalpana. Welcome to Mocha's Mock Interview podcast. We are very, very excited to have you here. And yeah, that's. I also want to quickly give the mic to you so that you're able to introduce yourself. Quickly tell us a little bit about your background, and then we can get the conversation started from there.
Thank you so much, Sagar. Thank you so much for inviting me and considering me, capable enough to be here. That's a pleasure. And I belong from Rajasthan. I've done my schooling all over India as my dad was in the Indian Navy. And after that, I pursued BSc Chemistry honors from Miranda House. And while I was pursuing my undergraduation, I was the vice president of my department. And that was when the whole journey of shifting from chemistry to MBA started, because I felt I had the soft skills required. And other than that, I really love painting and reading books. So I guess that sums up who I am as a person.
Great. I think this is a great segue to my next question. How do you tackle these questions during actual GDPI interviews when somebody asks you, tell me about yourself? Did you have a thought process that this is what the interviewer expects from me? Or did somebody tell you, like, this is a pro tip for the introductions and this is how you need to sort of look at it?
So, as far as what it was for GDPI, there was no one to really guide me as much. But I'll just tell you something recently that happened at IIMA. So, we had a mock interview process before our summer internship programs, and that was when I had to give an interview in front of the whole class. And we had invited guests, and I was asked to introduce myself. So, I began and I told somewhat on the similar lines as said right now, covering everything. And after that, in the feedback, they said that it was a really good introduction. Firstly, because I didn't repeat my name, because obviously the interview panelists know my name, so I shouldn't start with "Hi, my name is Kalpana." That becomes very obvious. And also, I tried to cover every aspect of my life. So I said a little about my background, about my education, about my interest, and also having a little smile on your face when you're talking about something that you're genuinely, aspirational about. As in when I talked about painting, I was smiling, I was having that energy. So that was what the feedback was from those people. And I feel that was, when I happened to realize, okay, I'd stepped on the right boat and I'm going in the right direction.
Correct. I mean, that's such a fascinating story as well that you had to introduce. This was something that you had to do after you entered IIM Ahmedabad. So that's quite interesting. I think what I'd like to really talk to you about now is so now this is such a interesting phase for CAT aspirants or people who have given CAT because they're waiting for their interview calls or they're anxious about which calls they're going to get. And once they get the calls, they are in a frenzy about what to do, how to prepare. They're running helter skelter to sort of figure that out. Uh, can we walk exactly 1 year before, and what was your thought process during this particular phase, and how did you approach this entire phase where your CAT was done, your scores were out, and now you're getting calls from different IIMs and other Premier B schools? And do let us know which are those places that you got a call from, and then how did you sort of go about prepping during this process?
Okay, so as soon as the exam got over, we got our results. So I had a 1 or 2 week period when I was just trying to relax a bit. And after that, I knew I had to start prepping for the interviews, even before the interview calls were out. No matter whether I get the best calls or not, I knew I had to give my best shot at this, go for the interviews because I'll get to learn a lot. So even if I'm going ahead with the second attempt in the next year, I would learn a lot from this journey. So that is why I didn't wait until the last moment to get all the calls and then start prepping. So I started with the basic prep that was required for each and every interview, which was going through my chemistry, undergraduation subjects actually. So go through your undergraduation subjects really well, especially during 10th, 11th, and 12th, I suppose, because they tend to pick up on very basic concepts and also include daily life applications. So whatever you see in daily life, you feel that okay, this could be applied from my subject, they could be questioning you on that, and they tend to question a lot about your acads. So be well prepared for that, I would say. And secondly, I started brushing up on general knowledge. So I started watching YouTube videos for every month in the past 1 year. So every month, like current affairs, I watched videos about them. And there were other channels as well that really helped me. So there's this Dhruv Rathi. So he posts videos about current events and tends to give a very good perspective from a lot of different stakeholders. So I felt that was really helpful for me. I made notes about that, and so mainly it was AGATS, general knowledge, and then came institute specific prep. That happened once I started getting the calls. So I got calls from all IIMs, and as soon as I got the calls, I started reading about the institutes, who are the different professors, trying to list down a few professors, like maybe two or three in my specific area of interest, so that I do know that these are the people I would be studying under. Apart from that, when did the institute was like it got established, what are the different courses that you get offered during the second year, because that shapes a lot about while what they'll ask in the interview. They'll be like, why IIMA? So you've got to frame an answer that depends on what you know about the institute. So that's how it went about, and I got a call from all IIMs, and I converted all of them as well. So I'm really glad about that.
Wow. Okay, that's quite nice, and to convert all IMs in itself is such a feat. Is something I don't think a lot of people can say that I got calls from all IMs and I converted them. So I'm again so lucky to have you here, and and here like you said a very interesting point. Like you talked about how you went about general knowledge, about how you made notes. In retrospect, after you sort of, since you have sort of had calls from all of these institutes, in retrospect, what would you have done differently in your prep, in GDPI prep that you've had? Now that you think about it, what do you think I should have added, or I felt was unnecessary, that maybe I shouldn't have done as much here and I should have stressed more here? Do you ever feel like that for any of the aspects of your prep?
Okay. So I feel I should have focused a little more on reading newspapers a bit before than I really started, because a lot of questions were asked from the daily newspapers. Like even on the day before, like if I have my interview on 13th, they could ask me anything about the newspaper, the content that was in the newspaper on 12th. So I feel reading newspapers that habit building takes a lot of time, so try to begin it as early as possible. I was a little late to that, and that is why I depended on YouTube videos. I feel that is something that I could have done a lot better. And what I did and I shouldn't have done, I feel almost everything was used in all the interviews. Like some aspect of it was used up somewhere. And even if it is not, you can try to bring it in that conversation to show that you know about a lot of different things. It gets gets the attention of the interviewers, that you do know about various different things that are happening within India as well as the worldwide. So if it's not useful, try to bring it in the conversation, but try to do it in a subtle way, because you wouldn't want to force fit it. So I feel that
Correct.
is something that I really felt in the interview. Almost everything is going to be useful. Nothing was wasted.
That's actually quite refreshing to hear. And yeah, reading newspapers is a habit that's so difficult to incorporate. I still remember my grandfather had to bribe me with 1 rupee every day when I was in school so that I read newspapers. And it worked well. Now I do read newspapers every day because of that. And my dad used to quiz me on those, and which is why I couldn't faff my way around articles as well. Like if he told me to read an article, worked well, I would say, in retrospect. But yeah, reading newspapers is something that I've felt is so critical, but we don't do it often. And something I also feel can't be replaced through the digital medium, especially because the attention span you need to sort of sit and read a newspaper, and as compared to you watching a video, might like the kind of attention or the kind of things that you grasp might be much larger when it comes to a newspaper, but that's more effort. So which is why I think we all prefer YouTube to that. And but which is why I really like the fact that you said while watching YouTube also you made notes. And I think this is a very interesting aspect that people need to think about. Instead of being a passive watcher of content, you need to ensure that there is some sort of active element that you are doing while preparing and watching these videos, so that it stays with you and you're able to sort of remember these things during these interviews as well. Please correct me or add anything if you think that was if something needs to be added in that trend. And how did sort of writing notes really help you? Did you go through them before the interviews, or like 1 day or 2 days before the interviews?
Yeah, surely I had to. So I made very brief notes in the beginning. So as in when I used to go through the videos, I used to write down stuff. And not everything is provided in the video. You have to do your own research as well. It's very important that the video is gonna give you the kickstart, but you'll have to go on your own research, try to read more about that subject, and all of that can be brought together in those notes of yours. And one day before the institute interview, I would make a one-page summary of everything so that I could just go through that whenever I'm feeling nervous, whenever I'm feeling I'm forgetting things. I could just go through that and, reassure myself. So that way, notes have always helped me. Like, not just one series of notes, but actually two to three series which sum up the notes. So that was very helpful.
Oh, yeah, this is quite intense. This is no wonder you converted all calls. The kind of prep that I can see that was involved was quite intense. Now, I think what I want to double click on is when you were starting to prepare for these interviews, I'm sure you talked to a few people, maybe in the previous years or seniors or some colleagues for that matter. Are there things that they warned you about, or are there things you want to warn students in this cycle for when it comes to GDPI prep, that these are things that you need to be wary of while prepping for these rounds?
So I feel most of the students that were already in IIMs, I talked to them, and they didn't really vary me about things like acads or gender knowledge. They were more concentrating on the soft skill aspect. So they emphasized a lot that you shouldn't panic in the interview hall. There is obviously gonna be a question that you don't know the answer of. What really matters is how you turn that situation around, how you make sure that you're coming off across as someone who really wants to learn things and is aware and humble enough to accept that you don't know everything. So that is a very important aspect that I got a critical feedback about, and I worked on that. I feel working on your personality was something that I missed on before, because that is a whole different segment that I wanted to talk about in the next few questions. You'll have to build your personality a lot. You'll have to read up books, try to have conversations, have deep conversations about what are the long term goals in your life, because you can't just fake it in the interview. The interviewers are going to know when you're just trying to make a long term or a short term goal answer just to get through the interview. When it's authentic and original, the people will see a connect. There will be a connect, a genuine connect with the interviewers, and they'll know that this person is going to make sure that the 2 years they spend at the institute, they'll put it to a much better use. So I feel that is very important. And other than that, working on your hobbies was also an additional tip. So you'll have to learn a little more about your hobbies, because, as I said, I used to read and paint. I tried to learn more about the painters about the world and India, what their famous paintings were, what were the mediums they used. So, because a conversation around that could be built if the interviewer has a similar hobby, and you would want to build a connect over there. So, I feel that's very important. Try to get to know a little more about your hobby so that you can build a conversation around it.
Correct. No, that I think that the aspect of soft skills is so important and is so overlooked, I think, and it's overlooked to a point where it's too late then to sort of go over it. And building your personality also requires like actual effort of you to sort of understand, as you said, your hobbies, your interests as well, have a few deeper conversations. And I think now I would also want to get your perspective on this. Does a sense of like-minded people around you and having a sense of community while trying to prepare for uh, for these rounds really help? Did you ever have a sense of community of people. Maybe they're not preparing for MBA at least, but people you could have deeper conversations with. Did that really help with your interviews? And like, did you have conversations, not mock interviews, but just conversations to ensure that you are able to sort of get into that zone of having these deeper conversations?
Yeah, I've had 2 to 3 friends, very close friends actually, who prepared together with me for this whole cat journey. And right from the very beginning to preparing for cat, in the very and till the very end, till getting the results and the calls out, I feel they've helped me a lot, not just in the preparation, because we used to divide topics. We used to give each other a topic, and then that person used to read up about that topic. I used to read up about another topic, and while we were hanging out, we used to share our views about that topic, because having a natural conversation about a topic helps you remember it way longer than if you're just reading about it. So I felt that was something that you can really, incorporate in your life, so that you get to learn a little more about topics without having to waste a lot of time in the researching, because that person would do the important research, get the important aspects of it, and share it with you. So that was
Correct.
something that helped on the ACATS front. And coming to the deeper conversations, those are the people who are going to stay with you throughout this journey, through the ups and the downs. And you'll obviously have those moments when you'll be like, why am I doing this? Is this effort even going to be worth it? So if you have that person around you, if you have those people around you, you'll be able to have that conversation with them. You'll be able to realize, why do you really want to do an MBA? And the inputs from them, and not even if they're not able to provide any inputs, the very fact that someone's out there listening to you and caring about you would help you to express your feelings even more better, get to know about yourself, so that you get through that down phase, so that you know it's okay, I need to push through, because this is going to help me in the longer term. So I feel it helps on both the fronts a lot. And one more important thing, so preparing for the analytical writing test, what we used to do was, we had a topic. Every day we used to decide a topic, and one of my close friends, so both of us used to write on the same topic and then share whatever we wrote. So I used to see what are the different aspects that that person has explored and I missed on, so that I get to know, okay, maybe these are the things that I really need to work on. So that also helped a lot.
Yeah. No, I think that that's such a uh, insightful answer. Especially, people don't underestimate the role of friends and like just a sense of community around this prep, because it can be a quite a lonely journey. This prep, because it's isolating. You are maybe quitting your job, or you're going from your regular life, and you are separating time to sort of prepare for this intense examination and the rounds that come after. So it's very important to find some sort of community that helps you get through it. And I'm so glad you had it. And it shows. I'm hoping the other friends also ended up in great IIMs or Premier B schools as well. But my next question is about that, about the fact that there are different institutions, and you did talk about institution specific prep. Now I do understand in terms of like understanding their history is one aspect, but did you vary the kind of content you were consuming for the preparation for this, for these interviews? Because there's a lot of confusion or ambiguity about how do you prepare. Now if I have an IIM Lucknow call, or if I have an IIM Kozhikode call, how are these interviews different, or how do I prepare for them differently, or should I prepare for them differently? How should I go about preparing for these institution specific interviews?
Okay, so as far as I know, the only difference that I had was knowing a little more about that city, about the culture, about that place, and I feel that was more than enough. Apart from knowing about the institute, not just the history, I would say, even the faculty, what are the different, what is the direction that that institute is pursuing. So, I am Lucknow also has a center in Noida, where they are doing executive coaching. So I feel that is something that they're exploring. So you would want to read a little more about it, like what does the institute focus on? You'll get to hear a lot. Like Bangalore focuses a lot on people who have work ex, whereas IIM
Yes.
Ahmedabad has a diverse, culture. So you'll have to learn little more about the institute rather than just the history, and also try to read up about the place that that institute is situated in. So in the Ahmedabad interview, I was asked about, chief ministers of various states. So they began with actually Tamil Nadu, and I was a little unsure. Like I knew it was MK Stalin, but I said, so maybe it's MK Stalin. So then the prof goes like, "Are you not sure?" I was like, "Sir, I prepped for the for the states that I have an interview for, the institutes that I have an interview for." So he was like, "Okay, what all calls did you get?" So I said, "I got all the calls." So then he started asking about some other state. So I was like, "No, sir, but this is my first interview." So then they laughed off, and then they were like, "Okay, okay, tell us about Gujarat." Then I was able to answer. Then he was like, "Oh, she is right about it. She did prepare for Gujarat." So I felt that was a very fun element of my IIM A interview. So
Yeah, I think it's credit to you because like a very important point that students can note here is the candor you had or the kind of conversation you were able to strike in a place where you didn't know the answer. Like you were not sure and you were like, okay, I don't know, but I only prepared. Like that's such a interesting way to like pose your authentic self, like, hey, I am preparing for these interviews, like this is unnatural for me as well to know all the states ka chief ministers, but I am doing this, and to be able to strike a conversation where they are also laughing it off is I think such a underrated skill. Like this is a skill that people don't understand. Like this is what soft skills is all about,
yeah.
being able to sort of hold your ground even when you don't know the answers. And this is such an insightful moment. I hope people are able to not just look at this as a funny incident, but as a way or an approach to look at these questions. And when you don't know these questions, sort of how do you approach them? So I'm very glad that you shared that anecdote as well. But like I just wanted to again like double click and emphasize on the fact that okay, if I have one is the place, of course. Like if you're getting a call from Lucknow, you should know more about say UP and about the place itself, and uh, and about the institute. What about now, if you say that Bangalore prepares focuses more on WorkX and IIM A focuses more on diverse, does that change your interview prep apart from like these aspects? Because a lot of people change the ways they look at other questions like behavioral questions, or should they focus more on general awareness questions for a certain college? Or do you think that people should like there should be some sort of homogeneity in terms of that prep, and then there should be specific prep only in terms of the institution and the location that they're based in?
I feel other than the aspects that I listed out, you don't really need to have a different, version of yourself or different, answers to the questions, because more or less everything goes in the same manner. They're looking for individuals who are willing to learn and, have all that personality traits. So I feel that is more than enough.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for clearing this out, because I think this has been something that we at Mocha have also been discussing as to how do you build products for institution specific prep, and what are the aspects that need to be covered. And it's quite clear that there are mostly the aspects are one, the geography of the institution, and second, the history of the institution as well. Like you should know them very well. And apart from that, like the other aspects of preparation can sort of be similar for most of these institutions. So from that, I think one thing that I wanted to sort of also understand is in all of these interviews, what is the thing that surprised you the most or stumped you the most in terms of like, oh, I didn't expect that. Like I didn't expect that element in an interview. What would that be?
I would say like every interview had a unique element to its own. So I felt the Ahmedabad panel was very chill because what really happens is you're all sitting in a room. So anyone who goes before you, they'll be coming out, they'll be sharing about their panel. They'll be like, "Oh, this panel was grilling me." They were asking a lot of questions on one thing, sticking on to it, and they tend to create a very panic environment. So I feel that was something that I had to deal with in the interview round, but that was only in the first one, because as soon as I went, I felt they were just reading the room or trying to create different environments for every individual and try to see how they're going to react to it. So my Ahmedabad panel was very chill, they were very friendly, and as I told you, they were having we were having a natural conversation. So that was something that I learned from my first interview, to not panic and to not listen a lot to the people who come before you or who have gone to the interview rooms before you. That was for Ahmedabad, and a completely different, experience at Bangalore, because at Bangalore I felt whatever I was saying, it was never enough to convince the panelists. So if I was saying that I chose to pursue MBA because of this, they would present a counter argument. They'd be like, "But you could do this over here also," and then I would try to give an answer, but then there was never a look of satisfaction or even a slight smile on their face, and that was making me very nervous at that point. And I felt, okay, Bangalore interview is gone. I don't think I'm going to get it. But I tried to be in that moment. I tried to answer all those questions. I tried to take out the thought of, the results out of my mind at that point. And I was like, okay, I'll just be present over here. I'll try to give this. And finally it did turn out to be good. So they're just trying to test you. You'll
Correct.
have to be present in the moment. Try to give your very best. Don't think that this is the end of the world or anything. The different aspects that I learned from every interview, and I feel like the Ahmedabad and Bangalore one ones were the ones that I feel I could share. So yeah,
Yeah.
you get to learn a lot from actually all of the interviews. A very different experience in all of them.
That's nice to hear, and I really like the fact that you said focus more on the process than the outcome. Like just focus on going there and having a conversation, and not making too much of it. Like just ensuring that it's a conversation where you're able to present your best self. There might be aspects where they might try to create a certain side kind of environment, but that's not indicative of how the interview is going. Like as you said in Bangalore, you felt like the answers were never enough, but it's still like the fact that you were still able to convert that meant that the interview went well and you
Yeah.
actually did finally crack that. So that's good to know, and that should be reassuring for a lot of people hearing this podcast as well, that don't worry too much about how what sort of environment that they're creating. It's just for them to test you in different environments. Which also brings me to my next question about when it comes to Bangalore and just work experience in general. How do you sort of highlight that? Because there are aspects. So one is undergrad, like one is the fact that they'll ask you technical questions about your undergrad degree. But when it comes to work experience or aspects like that, how do you sort of shape that answer? Like when people say, "Walk me through your work experience" or "Walk me through," so how do you tackle that question? What is it that the interviews are looking for from that? Are they looking for specific projects? Are they looking for the kind of responsibility you've had in these roles, or what does that look like?
Okay, firstly, a disclaimer. I'm a fresher, so
Yeah.
I just have to give a answer from what I've heard from other people.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not
this is
really.
also why I asked you, because you said Bangalore focuses on work ex, and since you didn't have like the lack of work experience is also something like, do they look at that as a negative aspect, and how do you then tackle that? Like, because does that ever become a question mark for colleges that focus on work experience, especially? So that as well. Like, how do you tackle the work experience question in general? Like, oh, you have work experience or you don't have work experience as well. So how do you tackle that?
Okay, so I feel in the Bangalore interview, since they knew that I haven't really worked anywhere, they asked me questions about my internships and what were the different roles that I had, roles and responsibilities. So I tried to walk them through the different internships, try to give them a flavor of all the different internships, because just talking to one specific internship would make it a little monotonous, I felt. I wanted to include as many skills that I had learned from all the internships. I tried to say that the human aspects that I learned from the human resource internship I had done, and also the humility and even the humbleness that I had to bring in about when I did the client servicing internship. So I tried to bring in different aspects from every internship, try to showcase that even though I do not have work ex, I have been in that environment through my internships. I have learned a lot about how things work, and I'm very eager to, further shape myself so that I get to be in a corporate world soon enough and execute that well. I feel even though they do focus on the work expert, that is a bit of an internal mechanism. I feel, what the percentage of people that they would want from work ex and the percentage of freshers that they would want. But one of the major aspects that I felt almost everyone has told me is it should show that you are willing to learn. So if you have work ex, you shouldn't be a person who's like, I don't know everything. I've learned this from my internship. The humbleness should show that I've done all of this, but there's a lot to learn, and I feel MBA would give me that platform to learn, because that's very important. Other than that, I feel you can cover it up with your internships, or even if not internships, the various positions of responsibility that you might have taken up under, your undergraduation, during your undergraduation. That could also help.
Correct. Okay. So, like, so show that you have taken up roles of responsibilities in different capacities, and how you have, how they have shaped you as an individual, as well, is something that you can cover even if you don't have work is what I'm getting from this. Now, another question that I think a lot of people always ask, and the reason why people ask for this is, uh, there's a basic funda that a lot of Indians do MBA for the high pay packages that come after, like for the placements that come after. But of course, that's not the kind of answer that you can give. Like, I am here for the lucrative pay packages that you have at the end of 2 years. And that's why the question of why MBA becomes tricky, because most Indians are incentivized to do an MBA for the higher pay package. But how do you then tackle a question like this, uh, in a perspective where you're still being authentic about what you're saying? Maybe there is a deeper answer to it that people have not found themselves, like as to what that could be. But how did you tackle this question, or how do you think about the approach people should look at when it comes to the why MBA question?
So I feel like most of us did feel that why MBA should be answered in one single line just for the package, but it really tells a lot about you. You need a lot of time to actually form that answer. Why
Correct.
MBA? Why are you doing this at this point in your life? And most of us are actually just doing things that we've been told about, or we've just been doing that before, so we're just continuing with it. I feel that would take a whole different energy and time from you to find the answer to that question. You can do that at your own pace. I wouldn't want anyone to just leave everything behind and first focus on that, but at the same time try to look at the small aspects that you could bring in, a change in your answer apart from the salary packages. So the very small aspects, such as working on yourself, because you do know that you're going to be a changed person after this, and the small societal changes that you could bring about after you have the necessary skills. And other than that, everyday challenges that you see around you, in corporate worlds, you must have heard about a lot of deceits and a lot of wrongdoings. So what are the ethical and moral fronts that you could bring to the table, and that you would want to create a change in that aspect? See, a lot of people are cribbing always about their work life balance. So a person who says that I would want to pursue this, I would want to make sure to even start an own organization of themselves, where this help people out, just like your platform is doing that right now. So that could become an answer in its own. So try to
Yeah.
look at the small aspects here and there. You could find answers in each and everything. Try
Correct.
to bring in a social and an emotional aspect to it, because that thing is what really sticks for a longer time. Because one, you do know you're going to give that answer, like about the salary and packages, but once you do come over here, it's very rigorous, it's a lot to take. And at a point you'll be like, is it should do I even want this anymore? And
Right.
you will have to have a bigger aim at life if you really want to get through this. You
Correct.
might get through the interviews and all, but MBA is going to be really tough on you. So be
Yeah.
prepared for that. So try to start working on that answer as soon as you can, so that you can slowly shape it. Try to incorporate feedback from other people. A lot of people have a different view about this. So they'll try to give you small suggestions. Try to incorporate that in your answer, but try to be authentic to yourself as well, because you wouldn't want to go there and fumble. They would, cross question you about it. So you should be well researched about it. Don't try to just say it for the sake of saying it.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's such a brilliant answer. It is. I read an answer as well about this why MBA question, and somebody said, two things. One is access, and the second is knowledge. When they said access, they said that, um, once I have an IIM degree, I have access to avenues and gateways that I would not otherwise have, which will help me sort of. And this person, like the context is this person came, worked at a startup, a very early stage startup, and then was doing this. It's like I do plan on being in this space, entrepreneurial space, and then they were also able to back it up with evidence that most IIM or IT founders have been the ones who have had access to capital, venture capital as well, and they're like, this access will help me. Like they said that everybody wants to change the world, but the ones who do are the ones who have access, and like IIM can give me access. And I felt that was such a brilliant answer. Focused on their entrepreneurial ambitions, focused on the fact that they actually worked in a startup, they've seen how the startup world works. Like the minute you have IIT or IIM, so unfortunately, that is sort of the way the VC, they're like venture capitalists are also trying to hedge their bets. So they're also trying to assess risk. And it's less riskier to bet on an IIM founder than it is to fund somebody else, just statistically. So like, I'm not trying to bring emotions in. Statistically, it's easier to bet on an IIM or an IIT founder. And that's where I want to be. That's what I want to make it easier for me to have access to capital and to networks. And I felt like that is such a realistic answer to give as well. They're like, I want to change the world, but to change the world, you need access. And that's what IIM helps me solve. And knowledge, of course, like he banked on the fact that building a business requires knowledge in terms of the technical aspects. I've understood what the processes look like, but I also want to see how theories and frameworks can also help me get to decisions faster. So all in all, I really, because I come from the startup world, when I saw that answer, I was like, if I were giving an interview, I would probably give something like this, because when you've been in the space a lot, you've seen a lot of founders getting funded, and it makes sense as to why people from IITs and IIM get funded. Very simply because it's like you have to understand the incentives of venture capitalists, and for them, it's always trying to reduce the amount of risk they're taking on founders. So that's something that I really liked as well, which I thought I'd share for anybody who's sort of coming from maybe a startup background, for that matter. Uh,
Yeah,
but
adding on to that, I feel your institute specific research would also help you in that answer a lot, because at IIMA we have a different department that helps startups and guides people a lot. So instead of taking a summer internship, you can actually work under here, and you also have the opportunity to not sit for your placements, but to take up a funding from that department, work under specialists, and get to explore your entrepreneurial idea. You get the time to do it, and after that 1 year you can again sit for the placements if that idea doesn't really work out. So I feel that is something that every institute, like a different institute, would have a different way of providing that opportunity. I feel that is something that you would really want to look up to. Just search or research on that so that you can form your answer on that, because a lot of people out here are also not sitting for their placements, so they're genuinely out here to learn. They're taking up responsibilities, being in clubs, running for elections. They're getting to learn a lot, and I feel the salary package doesn't really apply to them. And when I look at them, I feel inspired. Okay, this is not the only thing that people are here to do.
correct, correct. I think the salary package for them is sort of the byproduct. Like they're like, this will come if we are good at what we do.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I think that sort of confidence is something that most students lack in themselves. The minute they realize that they're this good, like they don't have to worry about, say, salaries, is when sort of that happens. But anyways, I think that aspect of researching about your university and seeing what kind of programs that they run is also such a great way to look at, understanding why you want to go to a specific institute. But yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly pause the podcast, check in with you, see how the podcast is going, if the flow is great for you, if there are aspects that you think we should definitely cover that we have missed out on. But yeah, so far, what do you think?
It's going good. I'm stuck, getting stuck at some places, I feel, because
No,
it's been
that's
a long.
okay. No, that's okay. Like we have editors for that, Kalpana. Don't worry about that. Wherever we feel like we both have fumbled or done things, I'm sure we'll sort of go through and fix that. That should not be an issue. Any aspects that you think that we haven't covered? I'm just looking at the question set. So we have covered most of it. I'm just gonna quickly ask my team as well if there are any aspects that we need to cover. Guys, everything good to go? I think we have to now do the never ever segment as well. Before that, process of interview
Just
prep is
want to work on the like WAT section, which is writing ability test, because
yes, correct. That
that
too.
is
Like, yeah, I think writing ability test is left. We need to focus on that. Non-negotiable skills one must have for MBA. I think we've covered most of it in different answers. Looking at your interview in retrospect, what really went well in the interview, I think we've covered that as well. Um, Anything you feel that was lacking during your interview prep? No, okay, that also we've covered more or less. Okay. Uh, Uh, okay, so never should you ever is you take a sip of water if you've done it, and then talk about whether you should have done it or not. Okay, so you take a sip of water if you've done it, right? So if they have done this, then they have to take a sip of water, and if you don't take a sip of water, also you should tell us why not. Like why should you not do this and things like that. So the first question is compromise on the. You can actually we can choose the kind of questions. Like one is compromise on the authenticity in the interview, which I think is a giveaway that you shouldn't. But okay, we can still cover it because I think most people tend to do that in the interviews. So there is that. Um, Question 12. Uh, Question 12 is what? One second.
I need to go borrow a glass. Actually, I don't have a glass.
Please feel free.
Give me 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, you have your glass. I can see it. Awesome. So, Kalpana, what we'll do is we have the never should you ever wala segment, and then we have one more thing that I'm going to maybe talk to you about is mock interviews. How important do you think mock interviews are in, the sort of in this prep, like when it comes to interview prep, how important do you think mock interviews are? And the last question is will be the final tips that you need to like any tip that you want to give to students, like a summary of tips that you want to give to students. And if there is an answer that you give me and I feel like I want to double click on something, then I'll do that. Otherwise, this should more or less be the structure of it. And Yeah, maybe I'll ask you one fun question about um, like what did you do to unwind during this time, because it's a quite stressful time for like students, like they're always just like at it with prep and things like that. Are there things underrated things or underrated tips that you have about should still try to sleep for 8 hours a day, or like before one day before the interview don't stress, or eat well or things like that, like things you think people don't focus on but actually do play a huge role in how you look at these interviews and how you prepare for them. So we'll maybe do that as well. Guys, can we start again? Awesome. Tilt your camera. That's right. Okay, cool. All right, Kalpana, this brings us to our next segment. It's a fun segment, or at least we've tried to make it fun. It's called Never Should You Ever, featuring interviews. And there's a basic rule: you just have to take a sip of water. It can be anything else, but for this podcast, we will say that it is water.
I'm in a
And
dry
you
state. I'm in a dry state.
Oh yeah, exactly. So it has to be water. Take a sip of water if you've done it, and then talk a little bit about why you should do it or you should not do this for interviews, especially for MBA interviews. So are we ready? Do we understand the rules? Do we have a glass of water ready with us as well? Awesome, cool. Uh, all right. The first question for you is compromise on authenticity in the interview because you think it would create a better impression on the panelists. So you
There's a trick to it. So I'm gonna take half a sip.
okay, half a sip. Interesting. Okay, okay.
So obviously, a lot of people are aware that we have our weaknesses, we have our strengths, and we would obviously want to highlight our strengths in the interview. But at the same time, it's important that we try to, bring out the aspects of our life that we're really working on, that we know that we haven't reached there, but at the same time, it's something that we genuinely look forward to, and we wish to become that version of ourselves. It shouldn't be a far-fetched idea of your personality, but at least a little bit in the future that you were working on it and you would achieve that in the near future. So you can maybe state those things in the interview.
Correct. Okay, that's a fair enough answer. Half a sip. I never thought half a sip would be a thing, but I'll continue this for the next podcast episode as well. Uh, Craft a few experiences and stories for yourself stacked up before the interview.
So are those experiences like, fake
Had
ones?
you? No, no, the ones that you've had. Like just recalling them and keeping them ready that, hey, these are the things that have happened to me, and this is so you've done this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you think it's something that people should do as well.
You've got to do it. You've got to be a little prepared because you wouldn't want to be caught off guard in the interview. There are a few set of questions that are pretty repetitive, as in what is one place that you failed as a leader, you could have done better, what is one thing that you're really proud of. All these questions, you've got to have a mock answer of it, and it shouldn't be like, engraved in stone as such, but try to have a few pointers that you would want to cover over the time. So 3 to 4 points in every question, so that you go through, you remember that, okay, I still have to cover this point, or else
Correct.
you'll be all over the place. So that is
Correct.
something that you've got to do.
Okay. All right. The next question is tried steering the interview in your favorable direction. You've done this. Okay, great. I would love to know how, like, if you have a story of how you've done this in a few interviews, we would love to hear that as well.
Okay, so I was asked about my biggest failure in life, I guess.
Mhm.
And that was something that revolved around how I was very anxious during my undergraduation, and it led to me, flunking my exams a little bit, not a lot because that would have affected my CGPA. So yeah, that was something that I was asked about, but then I took it in a direction that I really wanted to, which was how I overcame it by, inculcating mindfulness and working on my hobbies such as painting, because painting really requires you to bring out your creative side and helps you be present in the moment and look at the pretty things in life. Like everything in your life can be looked in a different perspective, from a very positive perspective, if you try for that. And I felt I steered the interview towards my hobbies from that, so that I could tell a little more about how painting has helped me in my life. And that was like in the I am Calcutta interview. I had a very fun experience over there trying to talk about mindfulness. And it also helped me to bring about how I've been reading philosophy. So, among reading, I try to read philosophies, and I talked about my favorite philosophy. So, from my biggest failure, I shifted to my hobbies and tried to talk about it because I knew it was my strong point. You'll have to do it very naturally. You'll have to, bring it in the direction that you really have done good work in.
Awesome. I think that that's great. And my last question to you in this segment is asked people around you to take mock interviews and ask them for feedback. Yes, you have. Okay. So we've had three sips and one half sip. But yeah, great. Would
I'm
love to
so
know how. Yeah.
so glad this was not a drinking game.
Yeah.
So, I feel mock interviews are very important, especially for people who are very underconfident in the way they're going to converse in the interview. So, try to have, first of all, start with your close friends so that you feel a little more confident. Try to open up to them. Stick to the pointers that you have in your mind. As I said before, like you're having a good point, list of items that you would like to cover up helps you to make sure that you are showing every aspect of yourself, every strong as like covering all your strengths. So that is very important, I feel. And slowly, slowly try to even have interviews in front of people who are not so close to you, so that you're in an uncomfortable environment. That helps a lot. The feedbacks, how do you wish to take the feedback really depends on you. Do you feel you have to work on it? Because a lot of feedbacks are such that it's very subjective. So some feedbacks could be helpful for you, some feedbacks couldn't be helpful for you. So you've got to make that choice at that point, that would you really wish to work, tweak it in that direction or not. So that is something you should do. But mock interviews are a must if you feel you're underconfident in, speaking and public speaking, because at that point you're going to panic a lot. So try to have conversations, and not just mock interviews. Try to have conversations around normal things with random people, so that that social skill is built in you. You get to be a little more confident.
Correct. And I think it's such an important point about feedback, right? Because feedback, one, is such a difficult skill to have. People don't understand, like, giving feedback in itself is something that requires effort. While we were building a product for mock interview as well, we were like, we really need to ensure the kind of feedback that goes in is mindful about their starting points, about where they are at currently, and their strengths and weaknesses are highlighted, and they know how to double down on their strengths as well, while trying to understand what are the improvement areas. It is something that we at the team had to unlearn and again learn to really build a product around feedback, because that's when we realized, okay, feedback is not just like a casual comment that you give, oh, I think you should improve your posture or confidence. Like, you need to be more actionable in the ways how you could do things. So I think, yeah, as you said, like, feedback can be subjective. You need to be able to make a decision as to what works for you and what doesn't. And shameless plug, like, if you guys need mock interviews, you can always try our product out for free and see if it helps. It is something that will put you in a pressure situation of sort of where you have a timer where you have to think of a response. And the responses are, and the questions are also personalized to your profile based on everything that the information that you provide. So far, our feedback has been quite promising, where students are like, we had to actually shut the app and go back and sort of prepare, because the questions were a little intimidating. So they're like, your questions are great, and that's why we are not able to sort of take it in the first go. We had to actually go prepare and then come back and give the interview. So you guys can try it out as well. It's on maukinterview.com and see if that works. But now this comes, like, what I want to do is come to the next aspect of this. This is something that um, a lot of people who haven't been born in metro cities face, which is the aspect of English. Uh, there is soft skills, of course, which is communication skills. There are individuals who are actually good at communication but happen to be slightly weak in English as their first language, or like, English is not the first language for most Indians. In such aspects, do you have any advice for them, where it comes to, when it comes to English, and how do these interviewers look at, say, if you're not proficient in English, is that a huge setback for you as a candidate, or is there ways you can mitigate that?
I feel getting your point across the other person is something that is the main, primary focus, or what is the primary criteria that the interviewers are looking for. So try to have a clear mindset about what you really wish to talk about, and get the point across without any noise. Try to make sure that the other person understands that. And also having a great personality, try it covers up for the small mistakes that you're making here and there, because that person knows that you're really working for it and you're going to do a lot better at it. Because I myself wasn't that great in public speaking, and I felt I was very anxious before such meetings, but today here I am taking up random opportunities that put me in such situations. Like, if you would have asked me for this podcast 2 to 3 years back, I would have not signed up for it. I would have been like, what would I do, how am I going to speak? So that is something that you've got to continuously work on, and that can be very evident from your answers. So the kind of person are you a person who's genuinely going to be working on your weaknesses and trying to make sure that you do all that you can to achieve your goals? If that comes across well to the interviewers, some aspects here and there will be gone. They won't really matter much.
Okay, that's a great answer, and that's a great insight as well. Focus on your thinking, and to essentially present that with, as you said, with very little noise.
Yeah.
More signal, less noise is what you need to focus on. Even if your English isn't, great or the best, doesn't matter, as long as your communication skills are solid and you're able to get the point across. Don't look at, uh, right now is not the time to dwell on the things that can't be changed very quickly. Like, focus on your, double down on your strengths, and just sort of work on them. Now I just want to get to a few lighter questions before we sort of wrap up. Um, this is a very stressful period for students. This is where people sort of really break their heads because cat is done, but there is just so much pent up pressure about cracking these schools. uh, I'm sure you went through a similar phase last year as well. What are a few things you did to cope? What are a few things you did to sort of just unwind during this time, this high pressure time when there were like just back to back interviews in these days? How did you keep yourself sane?
I feel the most important aspect of my life that has helped me through a lot of challenges in my life is my support system, which is my family and my friends. So, know your support system, go to them, share your feelings, be true to yourself and to them, because nothing is going to be worth it in the end if you don't have someone to share it with. I mean, not to sound very philosophical, but this is how it actually is in the world, and you're going to realize it a lot even during your MBA. So try to have your own tribe, people who you feel comfortable around. So even if you're having back-to-back interviews, having a person whom you could joke around with the small things that happen during the day, so that will help you get your mind off the stressful aspects of your life and even the interview. So as I said, my Bangalore interview didn't go that well. So if it wasn't for my friends, I would have overthought about it, felt like I'm not going to convert this, and not focus on the other important aspects. So I feel dealing with that with my friends and myself was something that really helped a lot. And secondly, pick on your hobbies. Try to take out a little bit time here and there within 2 to 3 days to just do something that you really like. It could be listening to music, dancing, painting, anything, because anyways that is going to be asked to you in the interview, so you might as well work on it. So just remember that it's not you wasting your time, it's just you improving your efficiency. So instead of sitting there for 10 hours and getting very less work done, take a break, rewind yourself, just feel free, and then get in, like, sit back and get the work done much more faster and much more efficiently.
Yeah, I think breaks are so important and almost underrated when it comes to such crunch times. People don't realize that it's not the number of hours; it's actually the quality of these hours that really make a difference. People are feel like if I don't take any breaks, things will be great. Like I'll continuously work. There is just this over glorification of the hustle. While it is important to put in the number of hours, it's also more important to have like good quality of hours that are put in, and breaks are as important as because your brain is just so overly stressed at this time. So if it's stressed and it goes to the interview stressed, you're bound to fumble. So it's important that those breaks are taken into factor and actually programmed in your schedule, that hey, you need to take a break here. And as you said beautifully, that you need to focus on your hobbies and find your support system. And I think while I think it is so important to like also be vulnerable to them, like tell them that hey, I'm feeling stressed, or because people try to tend to sort of close off during these times because of how stressed they are. So it's important to find whatever support system you find. It could be a parents, it could be a friends, whoever. uh, but yeah, that brings me to my ultimate question for the podcast, which is what are a few tips that you have? What are a few things that, as somebody who is converted, if I'm not getting this wrong, Bangalore, Lucknow, Ahmedabad, Calcutta, Kozhikode, Indore, or all the MBA calls that you got, you converted all of them. As somebody who has done this, been there, done that in the most complete way possible, what are a few tips that you have for the people listening to this podcast?
So I'll just try to list them down so that I don't take much of the time. Firstly, it would be make notes, because that is not just going to help you remember things, but will also help you during the writing ability test that you'll be giving, you'll get into the habit of writing, and also have a view about things not just from one perspective. Try to include different perspectives. You have very various frameworks for this, as in there's a pestle framework, so you get to look at the political, environmental, social, technological, legal, and I forgot the other E. So you get to look at it from different aspects, so that helps a lot. Include that in your answers. Show that you're a person who's not just looking at a problem from one side and is very, stubborn about it. You've got to be very open minded, but at the same time have a stand. It shouldn't really be questionable as much, because you've got to stick to your point. Make a point and be like, I'm according to what all I've learned, this is what I think. But at the same time, if I'm presented with valid enough arguments, I would obviously work on my opinion. So that is something that you've really got to work on. Secondly, build your personality throughout. You've still got time. Have a positive and a very, warm personality, because that shows a lot in the interview, in your answers, even in the questions that you are not able to answer. That speaks a lot about your personality. Try to have a very charming, face during the interview. Smile at moments when you genuinely want to smile. Just smile. It's not going to be a big deal. It's not unprofessional to smile in the interview. It's You're expressing something that you're really passionate about, so you might as well do it. Third would be, general knowledge is really important. Try to get your mind around it. You'll have to read newspapers. You'll have to work on the important aspects that are going on around the world. Try to research about it, have an opinion on it, because that will not just help you in the interviews but also in your writing ability tests. So those are topics based on current affairs as well as general awareness topics. So that is there. uh, have mock interviews are genuinely very important. You will get to learn a lot about, the places that you're lacking while you're having that conversation in front of someone else compared to in your own mind. Because when you're actually expressing it, it's a lot different than what is going on in your mind. So you'll have to have that experience as well. That's what I feel. And the final one would be present in the moment. And I would like to tell a story from Calcutta interview. So I was asked about how I deal with anxiety and other, mental health issues if I've ever, get to face them. So I was like, mindfulness is something that has genuinely helped me a lot to be really present in this moment and to have fun in it, to actually experience this moment as a whole. So that was something that was we were talking about, and there were three interviewers. So one of them was fiddling with a pencil, and apparently it broke off and it just bounced up to some corner of the room. So that happened in the middle of the interview, and obviously it went right off, like my head. So I was a little distracted by it. So when they were asking other questions, so like, my mind went over there, and then they were like, "Oh, okay, don't worry, it just happens." And then we continued our conversation, and then they were like. Among the three of us, like the interviewers asked, among the three of us, whom do you think is the most nervous right now? Since you talked about mindfulness, you might have observed that, right? So I said, sir, I guess it's me. It's not you guys who's the most nervous. And then they jokingly said, no, no, it's this guy. He just broke a pencil. So we laughed that off. And while I was leaving, so I saw the pencil fall on the ground. I literally picked it up and I gave it back to that sir. And they all started laughing again. So I feel, if I were very anxious at that point, I would have just wanted to leave the room as soon as possible and wouldn't have, picked that pencil back up and gave it to the sir, because that was just something I was just trying to live the moment as it was. So I feel, try to bring that in your personality, have that in your life, not just for this interview or this, phase of your life. It's going to help you a lot even in the coming up future.
That was, I think, the best summary I've ever heard in general. Like the fact that you took out time to just like list everything and be so anecdotal about a few things as well. I'm so glad you did this. Throughout this conversation, I learned so much. Primarily, what I learned about you as well, Kalpana, is, and this is something that I would want everyone to also notice, is just the level of honesty. in this interview and in general as to how you're able to carry that, and that's a testimonial to why you were able to convert all the interviews. It's not something, it was not a performance, it was someone who you are, and there's somebody you embody. And that's so reflective in this episode as well, that the fact that you're able to go with such radical candor everywhere and just present yourself in the best possible manner. I think that's really it. And as you said, be present in the moment so that you're able to bring yourself there. And I was able to see that. I was able to experience that charm as well. So I'm so grateful to you for coming here and sort of being a part of this podcast. Finally, I think the only thing I would like to say is me and my co-founders were engineers. When we started Mocha, we started it primarily because we felt a lot of our peers primarily struggled with the placements. They've struggled with, they had incredible technical skills, but they were not able to crack interviews primarily because they weren't very confident of themselves. And we also found that in all of these young Indians, there are a few gun to your head moments in everybody's lives, and interviews are one such moments where people feel like there's a gun to your head and you need to like that's where soft skills become so important. And we set out with to build Mocha as as a place where we are able to build technology to make young Indians more confident. That's quite simply it. And we wanted to find different use cases where we are able to sort of go and help people. And this year we decided that we want to do this for uh, cat students, or like people who are giving their cat and MBA aspirants for that matter, because we felt that's a place where so many diverse kind of students come from all sorts of backgrounds, and they finally come to a place where soft skills are so important. And it could be something that they did not focus on and say in their undergrad, or they come from places where soft skills wasn't given so much importance. So we felt like this was a very important problem to be solved in this aspect. So I just wanted to understand from your aspect, hearing about say mock interview as a tech product, which sort of helps to sort of give feedback based on the things that they did right, give personalized questions. Where do you think this fits in a student's journey when it comes to MBA student's journey in giving and receiving mock interviews? Do you think this is something that can add value? This can be off the record, or this can be as a part of the podcast as well. But I just really wanted to hear your perspective as somebody who's been there, done that. Do you think a product like this would have been something you used last year?
I feel it would really help, especially in the online interviews that we'll be having, as because we can practice with our friends for the offline interviews, but online interviews still have a few intricacies that we really need to work upon. So I tried out the product that you were showing on that day, that there will be questions you've got this time to answer, and all of that happens even after just the cat interview. Like you'll have job interviews coming up when you're in your MBA. So I recently had that from for that one of the firms that I interviewed for, and at that time I feel it would have helped if I would have taken up this moment, the product. I would have tried out that product. It would have helped a lot. And even when your friends are not available, or if you feel that they are not in the same mindset, or like they're not preparing for the same thing as you are, so getting the right questions is important, because you need to practice for a few set of questions. You need to have your answers ready for those questions, so that could be really worked upon when they are using the product, because you guys will obviously provide the questions in that format, which are usually asked in the interview, because there are a lot of questions that get repeated a lot. And other than that, the other questions that will be out of the box will also, help them think on quick on their feet, which is a very important aspect, I feel. So it would help a lot to the students, I feel.
All right. Thank you so much, Kalpana, again for the answer and for being a part of this podcast. When I honestly sort of got on call and connected with you, I was like, oh, we have Kalpana who's in IIM A. People will really sort of be excited to listen to you. But the fact that you've converted all the calls now just adds is a cherry on the cake. And I'm so glad that we had this conversation. I really hope that this podcast is helpful for all the students out there listening to this. And as I said, once again, thank you so much for being on Mauka's mock interview podcast. And I hope that students are able to derive as much value as they can from this. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.